West Legal Ed Center would like to welcome you to today's program, Analytics and Awareness, a new era of insight in early data assessment. Thank you for joining our presenters, Lana Shell, JD, Channel Partner Manager, Content Analyst, LLC, and Steve Schneider, Director, Product Development, Thomson-Reuters. Thank you for joining us, and I will now turn things over to our speakers.
Thank you, Molly. This is Steve Schneider, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. Again, my name is Steve Schneider. I'm a Director of New Product Development here at Thomson-Reuters. I am responsible for our litigation solutions line of products and more specifically initiatives related to eDiscovery. I've been in my current position for roughly 7 years, and I've been in the legal information industry with Thomson for more than 20 years. Prior to that, I practiced law in Minneapolis back in the days when discovery consisted of banker's boxes and Post-it notes. So I've obviously seen a tremendous change in how discovery is conducted, and I'm happy to be here to have an opportunity to share some of our thoughts today on early data assessment. And I'll turn it over to Lana.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. As Steve said, my name is Lana Shell, and I am the Manager of Channel Partnerships for Content Analyst Company. I've been in this role for a couple of years now, working with our partners in the software and service provider arena to help them coordinate with their end clients on the litigation lifecycle and how they integrate analytics into their software. I've continue to work with them strategically on consulting on issues that address both cost and risk associated with litigation, which I've been doing for a little over a decade now in many different roles that I've held, working both in-house at law firms as well as with other service providers and software companies. I received my JD from Widener University School of Law, and I am also the co-founder and executive director of Women in eDiscovery. I echo Steve's sentiments. I'm excited to be here today and looking forward to sharing this information with all of you on the line.
Okay, thanks, Lana. Little housekeeping detail up front. We will be referring to the slide numbers as we move through the presentation. So we will try to make sure that we keep everybody on the same page as we move through our program information. So if we can move to slide 3, we have the agenda there. I'll go through this quickly. We'll start by discussing the current state of big data, the challenges it presents, and thoughts on how to mitigate those challenges. We'll talk about the trend in litigation to shifting data analysis upstream and what that means for you. At that point, I'll turn it over to Lana to discuss the significant advantages of adopting early data analysis to a comprehensive early case assessment model, how culling, threading, and grouping can streamline your processes. She will also discuss why market shifts and the need for litigation readiness are prompting early data analysis improvements, as well as the application of a logic-based approach to the complex eDiscovery process and the benefits that offers. And then finally, we will discuss how developing an integrated suite of tools makes for a stronger eDiscovery solution. So we've got a lot of information to cover here. So let's go ahead and get started. If we move to slide 4, current big data challenges. Obviously, big data is one of the hottest catchphrases you'll hear about in litigation today for a number of reasons. One is just the sheer volume of data being generated, but there's also the aspect of different data sources that are increasing in number and the format on which data can live and how it can be accessed. All that is constantly evolving, which means we constantly have a growing and moving target when we're working on our eDiscovery projects. For example, 10 years ago, a single custodian may have generated hundreds or a few thousand documents, and they would have been in a fairly standard format. Well, today that same custodian could generate hundreds of thousands or even millions of documents in multiple different formats in multiple different locations, making the job of collecting and analyzing that information much more difficult. Now, these concerns about data volume and types of data aren't just top of mind for attorneys. The second bullet point, you'll see we reference a recent Gartner study that was done of more than 2,000 CIOs at various companies across the country. And that survey found that the top technology priority for those CIOs in 2013 is data analytics and the business intelligence information that drives. And over 55% of those respondents highlighted digital technologies that impact big data and analytics would be the most disruptive technologies for their businesses. And moving on to our third bullet point, just because everybody likes statistics, you'll look at the charts on the right-hand side of the slide. Just from a social media standpoint alone, if you look at Facebook, they have reported that they have 665 million daily active users, and that they process 2.5 billion pieces of content and over 500 terabytes of data each day. Twitter also reports that it has over 200 million active users who send more than 400 million tweets per day. And what all of this expansion of data tells us is that we need to adapt our techniques and processes in order to be more efficient and effective in our document reviews. We're also learning that it's important, it's actually more important to understand our data early in the process than it is to try to reduce that amount of data for assessment. By applying concept-aware analytics earlier in the process, we allow our legal teams to focus on insights and evaluations. They can make better judgments over a large pool of information early in a matter because they're looking for a comprehensive understanding of that information, and that can bring to light previously hidden insights. So the next question is, well, how do we accomplish this? So as we move to slide 5, we start by what we call here an upstream focus on data. And I like to look at this in terms of kind of the evolution of document review. Initially, we had straight linear reviews where we would just start at document 1 and roll through to the end of the document review. And as we started to get more and more data, we found that that wasn't effective or efficient anymore. So we looked for ways to get to our relevant data more quickly. And that brought us to traditional Boolean searching, as you see in the first bullet point, or keyword-based document tagging. And those are effective techniques when you have a reviewer who's familiar with a data set. But with the volume of information that we're talking about now in current matters, it becomes a random and inefficient process. So the point that we are talking about today is to reposition effort to an earlier stage in the discovery process. Used advanced text analytics to leverage the power of linguistics, mathematics, so that legal teams can supplement keyword search strategies with those advanced analytics. They can maximize their time analyzing critical findings rather than worrying about how to narrow down their document set to the essential material that they will then need to analyze. To that end, let's dive into some practical ways on how to accomplish this. If we move to slide 6, the first point we make is regarding creating a data roadmap, and this is becoming a necessity as you organize your data. Creating a data map gives you information about where your data lives, who owns the data, what formats it's in, what language it's in, what the high volume of that data is. That high-level understanding of the data is necessary in order to be able to move quickly to properly assess what's relevant and what isn't. And obviously, speed is a paramount concern because of the accelerated pace of modern litigation. So getting to that high-level understanding quickly is becoming more and more important. The second point that we make is that it's important. Everyone wants to get to the review stage as quickly as possible, but really it's the very most important first step is to organize your documents first, then review. You need to be able to provide the correct information to the appropriate experts on your teams. And you'll find that the entire discovery process changes as you're able to direct your teams and the whole review in order to create the most efficiencies in that review process. Obtaining that high-level understanding that I talked about, that holistic view of the litigation earlier, as you can see in the last set of bullet points, gives you a enhanced projection of your data requirements, helps you to anticipate potential information challenges, and generate a more accurate estimate of the potential resource needs you'll have. We're also seeing a trend where courts are prompting parties to take that holistic view closer to the commencement of the case rather than as it's approaching trial, because they see the importance of that high-level understanding and how it can create efficiencies throughout the whole litigation. Now, we've talked about getting an earlier understanding of our data. Let's talk about the tools that we use and the methods we use to do that. So let's move to slide 7. Some of the proven techniques for classifying data are helping legal teams formulate their plans faster and more dynamically. Categorizing unfamiliar data, for instance, helps your teams understand the general landscape and broadly identify key issues associated with a matter. It keeps you from doing a blind evaluation of information, and it can help reveal prospective costs given the total number of documents and, as I mentioned before, their locations, languages, and other variables. Using conceptual clustering, you can build efficiency into your review by grouping material containing similar terms, similar concepts, and word usage. That allows you to start breaking down the large, unmanageable volume of data that you might have into separate but unified components that teams of reviewers can assess. So on your team, you may have members with different levels of expertise or different areas of expertise. You can start organizing your review and providing your reviewers with the data that's most relevant to their skills. And that allows you to combine all of their abilities to form a more streamlined process for your eDiscovery. Focusing on this type of concept clustering and analysis can provide insight during the data analysis phase and support other searching techniques like keyword searching, as I mentioned before. Other techniques, such as near deduplication technology, which compares similar records. For example, you may have weekly status updates that have a similar format and a lot of similar language, but have key information, maybe statistics or dates or other information that's changed in those that's very important. But we can group those documents together so that a team or a reviewer can look at those documents as a whole. Similarly, email threading techniques that group messages together allow you to accelerate your review without sacrificing the team's ability to uncover critical information. And the earlier we engage in these processes, the earlier we actually apply these techniques, that allows us to identify non-responsive material that's less likely to populate later search results. So you can eliminate a big portion of your litigation cost. And if we move to slide 8, I'll make one more point about moving data upstream. Applying analytics in this early stage helps attorneys plan for the initial meet and confer conference, as well as identify key search terms, as I've mentioned a couple of times. There's obviously an expectation that every individual attending the meet and confer has a specific understanding of how the discovery process is likely to proceed. And these concept-based analytics help provide that overall understanding of the data earlier in the process, allowing your attorneys to spend more time understanding the critical findings that these analytics uncover. In addition, litigators have a responsibility to understand even the most granular details associated with a particular production of information. They can gain tremendous advantages by quickly studying obvious email relationships and highlight unusual patterns. This type of analysis can help focus a meet and confer discussion on excluding certain records during the initial exchange, as well as limiting or expanding the potential custodian pool. It's the ability to identify these hidden details that make analytics so powerful and important. While the contents of a particular group of files may provide insight into various allegations, we find it's often the patterns in those records or the gaps in their sequencing that typically present a lot of the most useful clues. So analytics allow you to, early on, identify some of that hidden relationships, hidden information about your data. At this point, I'll turn the presentation over to Lana to begin the discussion in more detail on how adapting early data assessment to ECA can benefit you and your teams.
Great, thanks, Steve. So we're on, slide 9. And as Steve said, I'm going to start diving a little bit deeper into how we get into early case assessment from that early data assessment. There are a lot of factors that impact the success of data assessment. Filtering the universe of data is frequently one of the highest priorities, especially when you're faced with litigation. It's trying to figure out what do I have and where is it. In order to do so, those that are analyzing the data have to leverage language usage to capture the key conceptual details faster than ever. They must also recognize that it's not always the content that's king, but it's often the context of where those documents are that really rules. Being able to arm the legal teams with the ability to determine where a particular document fits within the broader data environment is really one of the key components of leveraging analytics in early case assessment. So on this slide, we have 3 different analytics techniques that are listed. I'm not going to go too far into the weeds on these, but just giving you an idea of some different ones that are out there that you're able to select when you have a given matter and try to decide which one is ideal for that case. Each of them has their advantages, but they all serve as very valuable weapons in the early stages of either an investigation or in a litigation. If we turn now to slide 10, I'm going to get into discussing how we can leverage analytics in different respects. On this slide, we're going to talk more about culling and prioritizing data early on. So many advantages of culling documents, but especially more recently because of the big data revolution, which has just been sweeping, I think, just about every industry that's out there. We're really focused now much more on being able to cull data because there's just so much of it being created in the ordinary course of business. Legal teams are being forced to apply these types of analytic techniques for being able to segregate or separate or segregate types of data sets and being able to prioritize them, not just for early case assessment, but then further downstream for review. It's a lot easier these days for the litigants to be able to find their data, to organize it, to securely distribute that information. And because of that, there's fewer burdens that are associated with culling any of their information or the material in advance. Because of this ease of access, it's really heightening the benefits of being able to cull in advance, and it's ensuring a more complete record search, enhancing defensibility of the process as a whole, and being able to support the integrity of the review. So when we eliminate these variables, reviewers can now streamline their activities and focus a lot more on what's at the core of their case, finding the answers and not wasting any of their valuable time or their resources looking for or responding to irrelevant questions or concerns. We'll move on to the next slide. So we're on 11. And we can build on culling and talk more about other analytics technologies such as threading or grouping. We also call grouping clustering for those of you that are more aware of analytics technologies. But like culling, being able to divide information into comprehensive components will really help reviewers gain a deeper understanding of the macro issues involved in their matters. The knowledge is extremely useful in developing their search strategy, either with an adversary or explaining to a client the likelihood of success or failure of a case. Keeping in mind that leveraging analytics early on in a case is a key component to being able to help a client decide whether they're going to fight or settle. The ability to be able to do this and work more closely with the data and consult with their client is really a distinguishing characteristic in a really hyper-competitive marketplace. And I mention this because in 2012, just last year, the American Lawyer surveyed law firm leaders and asked them to identify the most common change that they've seen in client behavior. And I thought it was quite interesting that 75% of them highlighted that more and more clients are requesting discounts. And on top of that, even more interestingly, is that 49% of the law firm leaders noted that their clients are asking for even deeper discounts. So this bigger focus now on cost reduction is really pressuring law firms to continue to improve their performance, and it's really setting up a new norm for legal practice that's going to be mandating greater efficiency, more concise analysis, and expedited responsiveness. So how can they do this? Well, applying analytics, incorporating some of the techniques, and I'd mentioned on the previous page the different types of analytics that can link documents with similar themes or concepts. By linking them together and focusing on those groups, or by focusing on email threads, legal teams can really dive in earlier to develop search protocols, showcase their innovative approach to their clients, their colleagues, and if need be, to the courts. And it also really helps them at the meet and confer conferences. I know Steve had mentioned the meet and confer conference that comes very early on in litigation. So lawyers are expected to come to the table familiar with their issues and being able to approach the data and explain in the proper context what they have. And being able to leverage analytics earlier in the process is going to get them this information and be better prepared for these types of meetings. Okay, so we'll move on to the 12th slide. Talk a little bit about the shifts in market as well as litigation readiness. A first bullet point here, we mentioned the case law. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Silva-Moore opinion from 2012 that was often talked about and written about, but I think that's one of many cases, as well as market sentiment, that has really been swaying in favor of meaning-based search. And because of that, there seems to be a much greater anticipation of it being used. In addition, the likelihood of needing multiple tools to address the more complex process is mandating the integration of different platforms. And as this grows and becomes more sophisticated and widely adopted, the linguistic anomalies are no longer being tolerated. It's interesting that in addition, the quality of results and attorneys actually using this technology and seeing that the quality is really there, it's fueling much higher levels of trust in machine learning. I've seen, and probably just over the past 3 or 4 years, that the litigants that are being much more proactive tend to be better prepared, developing greater understanding and of their ideal strategy than their peers that are just sitting back and being more reactionary. And I really think that's because teams that leverage analytics have found that they're able to identify and categorize records in a manner that's much more consistent with this global movement that we've been hearing so much about in the information governance side of things, which is going to, back to the legal side, make it easier for them when it comes to preparing for productions or later stages of the process, such as preparing for trial if need be. One last point on this slide, down at the bottom in the orange block that's there, that talks about the cost associated with this. Cost still tends to be a great disincentive to implement these types of technology improvements. I've seen many strong motivators, and many times the costs be very insignificant when you look at such things as having to meet court-mandated deadlines and having to deal with these large mounds of data that are being created and collected for litigation. A lot of times, attorneys being able to know if a client even has a case, if there's any merit to the case, whether they should fight or settle, is also another factor, a motivator. Reducing the downstream cost of review. Review continues to be such a high percentage of litigation that being able to leverage technology and analytics early on typically cuts that cost significantly. And finally, as it says here, reducing the cost of, defeat, and nobody wants to be defeated. I just wanted to mention several other things because that sounds somewhat threatening. Use technology or you'll be defeated. But there's many factors. So I just wanted to point those out. If we move on to slide 13, talk a little bit about logic-based approach to this complex process. While we all know that litigation is inherently uncertain, the application of mathematical reasoning definitely provides a sense of predictability and a universal set of standards. The results might differ, but it's been undisputed that the common premise of applying logic to a process of this type will yield better results. Despite the variety of options available, the second bullet point here, latent semantic indexing, or as we refer to it as LSI, is one of the most advanced analytic strategies. Probably the one that I'm most familiar with here at Content Analyst. It's pretty cool because not only is it sophisticated, it has sophisticated computations that are used to assess the key linguistic associations, but the similarity of human reasoning and how it parses through the data based on that is what makes it very unique. Being able to leverage that and supplementing your professional judgment naturally accelerates the early case assessment process. Let's see, what else did I want to say on here? Pardon me. While legal teams have always been proficient in conveying assessments based on a limited review of the cursory information, now with this technology they're empowered with the ability to apply a very broad view to a vast pool of information, and they can start to draw more conclusions rather than just start to make inferences. The advanced data analysis tools such as LSI is going to permit them to identify details about document types, about topics that are found within that larger corpus of data, and give them the ability to form a holistic picture of their ultimate task and what's going on in the entire data set for the case. When we combine these preliminary characteristics with a key set of responsive documents, and you match that across an entire document spectrum, it's going to help you to make recommendations a lot faster with more confidence and with greater accuracy. So we will move on to slide 14. Don't be scared by the mathematical part of this. We're gonna keep this fairly high level, but talk about, when those that had studied search focused their attention on, they focused it more on linguistics and the rules of the language, and they were trying to find patterns within a specific given body of text. They came to realize that it's now more of a mathematical equation, and it's not so much of a reading comprehension issue or dilemma. Currently, analytics engines commonly rely on statistics and probability. Some of them also include an algebraic analysis, and that drives it to identify concepts within particular records. So it's always been ironic to me that although this appears to be quite a complex approach to most of us, it actually is quite simplified when it comes to the experience of the end user. Math-based analytics tools enable more reliable and flexible conceptual search or classification of the data. It does so in less time, with minimal effort, and it offers more initial conclusions and continues to build, or as I often explain it, it continues to learn based on the foundation that you provide to it, and that allows it to make more advanced determinations as the matter progresses. To kind of simplify that, the more information that you give to the system, it's able to learn more from that, and it can build stronger conclusions. So tiny data sets don't necessarily, they work, but they're not it doesn't give the system as much information. The more that you can feed into it, the larger pool of data that you can give to it, the more it will learn from. As has been discussed a lot in the past few years around technology-assisted review, efficiency, effectiveness, precision, they're really all the goal that we're striving for when leveraging this technology. Increasing the quantity of results is becoming less important than really what the quality of those findings are. I know Steve had mentioned that legal teams are definitely less concerned now with eliminating data and are much more focused on finding what's important and getting to that data a lot faster. By leveraging technology, you're able to rank the relevant records, and the legal teams can develop strategies at an unprecedented pace with the high level of accuracy. And then again, this all goes back to being able to enhance the competitive positioning, being able to get to that data faster and doing right by the client. So many benefits, and these are just some of the initial ones. We move on to slide 15, and then we're going to conclude on this slide, and then we'll take some questions. So if anyone has any questions and you want to start submitting them, we'll get to them shortly. But developing a stronger solution. So the analysis of data is both an art and a science, as we have listed here, and in many ways, it is a mathematical equation as well. If you look at the multifaceted nature of this current approach to making key determinations early in the life cycle of a case, it's apparent, it's essential that legal teams leverage a diverse set of tools that are going to really help them supplement their judgment and their experience. By no means are we advocating that this technology is ever going to take the place of your experiences and your judgment and being able to litigate a case, but this is just another almost necessary nowadays tool to have in your tool belt. But keeping that in mind, as the second bullet point states, you need to do this with a continuous workflow of integrated operations rather than just than looking at a disparate conglomeration of technology. So the integration is providing a consistent user experience, which is going to foster efficiency and enable the analytics engine to maximize a reviewer's options. But you need to remember that this is all part of a workflow when you start combining these technologies. It will definitely lower cost. It will raise productivity. and provide a critical foundation for legal teams to build long-term strategies. Something else that we probably should discuss on this page is as the data volumes are exploding, many of you who've been on review teams or worked with review teams know that reviewers are pretty much suffocating with the amounts of data that are being presented to them. Leveraging this technology can certainly help them evaluate options more holistically than ever before. So with the proper tools and the amount of data becoming less important, it gives you the ability to categorize and interpret key components of the entire data set. I think just in conclusion here, as the legal community adopts these changes and looking at data a little differently, their expectations are also becoming modified. They're able to make comprehensive conclusions, and the use of technology is definitely becoming more common and trustworthy in the legal field. And as I've seen, as it continues to be recognized as defensible, legal teams are definitely adopting the technology earlier, using it more extensively, and certainly without hesitation. And with that, we can move on to the final slide, which is if there are any questions, and Steve and I will be able to hopefully answer any that come up.
And actually, Lana, I noticed that we did get one question here. The question was, all of this mathematical and logical approach sounds good, but don't you really still need a man in the loop to maintain a high level of accuracy as well as ethical and professional responsibility standards? And I think this was submitted right as you were discussing some of this on the last slide. Maybe you want to just reiterate what you were talking about in terms of not replacing experience and judgment of your review teams, and how an analytics approach like this supplements that.
Right, absolutely. I think, and I appreciate you posting the follow-up saying that I had already answered it. I think it's really important to reiterate that this is supplemental to your experience and your knowledge about the case. While you can feed information into like an LSI index or a platform that has that integrated, you definitely still need to have your eyes on the workflow. You still need to make determinations about whether the process is accurate. And this all goes back to technology-assisted review, which is probably a whole other webinar for another day if we get into that. But yeah, this is just supplemental and a great way to help you get through those mounds of data that you're faced with, and be ready to go into a meet and confer or be able to consult with your client about the merits of the case. Are there any other questions?
I'm not seeing any other questions having been submitted, but if anything, if any questions do arise after the presentation, you can please feel free to contact us. Other than that, I guess I'd just like to say thank you again for the opportunity to discuss early data assessment with you today, and thanks again to Lana for lending all your domain expertise and experience to this discussion.
Thank you.
And with that, I think we'll sign off. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for selecting West Legal Ed Center. For optimal savings, why not consider a customized subscription? You'll get unlimited access to the largest, most current CLE library offered online. Call 1-866-765-MCLE for more information on how to maximize this opportunity. That's 1-866-765-MCLE for continuing education that's always comprehensive, always relevant, always current.